Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on navigating multi-cloud networking, designing for agility and cloud efficiencies amid growing infrastructure complexity. My name is Shaumik Ghosh. I'm Senior Assistant Editor with Economic Times CIO and CISO, and I'm glad to be your moderator and host for the session. Now, folks, as you well know, enterprises are doubling down on digital and transformation. And this is the reason why multi-cloud has now become the default reality and not just a strategic move. Now, different clouds can power different workloads, geographies, and innovation bets. Now, on paper, they look great when it promises agility, resilience, and choice. But you as IT leaders and IT practitioners know very well that many organizations are discovering a difficult truth, which is with every new cloud, the complexity is rising faster than the value, especially when it comes to network not being designed to keep pace. Now, what used to be a fairly contained networking layer at this point in time has now turned into something that stretches beyond regions, providers, security models, and operating teams. Policies are decoded, keep multiplying, and we have visibility fragments. What happens as a result? You very well know we've got networking quietly becoming the slowest and the most brittle part of a multi-cloud stack. And this leads to slowing down projects, inflation costs, and increasing operation risks just when the business expects speed and innovation. Well, enough about the horror story. Today's webinar actually aims to solve all of those challenges and actually do what the business objective is and accelerate AI-led transformation for you. Now, today's session, we've got excellent speakers out here who are going to give you perspectives, not only from a practitioner's point of view, but also from a research point of view. To start with, let me call upon Rajat Gopal. Rajat, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's an absolute pleasure hosting you.
Thank you for inviting me here.
All right. Now, folks, Rajat here is the Vice President of Cloud Networking and Security Solutions at Tata Communications. And he's also responsible for overseeing the development and delivery of cutting-edge solutions that can help enterprises navigate the complexities of multi-cloud environments. Now, here's a man who's worked across various companies and various verticals. So we would encourage you to please share your questions with us in the Q&A box. Our specialists here would be more than happy to address them towards the end of today's session. All right. With that said, we have also got a VP of Research, Paul Nicholson, who we had interviewed on some of the ways that AI is actually at some of the technological advancements or the technology measures IT leaders must take at this point in time to be able to go down on that AI-led transformation path. Now, Rajat, while we try to bring this up in the meantime, could you share some of the observations that you've had at this point in time? Do you see a lot of banking institutions, old and young, express the same kind of challenge, or do we see multi-cloud complexities typically with the newer banks, or are the older ones struggling just as much?
No, I think the challenge is across the board. Even if you take a step back, how people arrive in the multi-cloud arena. They could be taking multiple routes. Right? It could be an accident. For example, for larger banks and companies, it could be an acquisition they made and the acquirer is in a different cloud and the one being acquired is in a different cloud, right? So that's an accidental multi-cloud. For others, it is a business imperative. We have seen how many cloud outages that are happening these days, right? You saw last month where an AWS region brought down entire businesses. So I think this issue is across the board, whether you are young or mature, big or small, and then the time to act for most of these companies and institutions is now.
All right. Thanks so much. And while we get Paul Nicholson to actually share his points of view as well, let me quickly give you an introduction of Paul. Paul is Vice President of Research, Cloud and Data Center Networks at IDC. And Paul also provides thought leadership and actionable insights on cloud and data center. And in addition to that, also networking markets and technologies, not just to IT leaders, but then he, shares these findings and gives insights to cloud service providers as well.
Great. Oh yeah, we're going to give you an overview of some of the research we have and also give an introduction into multi-cloud networking. So the agenda I have today is, first of all, talking about the changing application landscape, giving some details on what organizations are dealing with. Then we've got a number of research slides to back up some of the thoughts we've talked about in the first section. Then we're going to talk about considering multi-cloud solutions. What type of benefits can you achieve from deploying a multi-cloud networking solution and connectivity solution? Then at the end, we'll have a short section on takeaways for the business and IT leaders, including the C-suite as well. So with that, let's get to it. So as I'm sure you're all aware, there's a lot of changes going on. AI initiatives are dominating conversations today, but there's also the reality of modern application workloads, be it microservices or cloud-based applications. And what we're seeing is organizations are increasingly requiring interconnection to multiple different data centers, multiple different cloud networks, co-location facilities, and even SaaS applications. And, as we look at this, we can see, we do a survey called the Future Enterprise Resiliency Spending Survey. And one of the interesting things which I thought was relevant for this webinar is I looked at the last 3 months to see what were the top 3 elements that enterprises are spending on and will keep spending on regardless, even if with all the other issues which are going on. And the top 3 did change, but they changed between the same 3 each time. So AI and automation initiatives is currently number 1 in this one from September. Security, which is a very common top of poll result in many surveys. Risk and compliance is number 2. And then interestingly, infrastructure and IT operations is number 3. And this has been pretty consistent. And I think a lot of this can go back to all the new applications which are being rolled out, which require new connectivity, new thought process in terms of how they're approached. Now, when we look at organizations today, many are multi-cloud today. 65% operate a hybrid cloud, with 31%, planning to implement in the next 12 months. So there's definitely momentum, even for those who are currently not in that mode. And, additional optimization is required to eliminate silos and to basically be performant and create the environment we need for these modern applications and obviously the AI projects, which are top of mind as well. Now, one of the questions we often get is how big is the rollout? And we all see the numbers from some of the largest deployments. Facebook put 100,000 GPU cluster out, and there's lots of other examples going on as well. But we asked enterprises, what was their planned number of AI application rollouts over the next year. And you can see the number is quite high. So, when you look at over 30 applications, you can see that comes in at 15%. But if you couple that with the next one down, it is a rather high number of 21 to 30 applications as well. So we've got extremely high numbers of applications either being retrofitted or being dedicated for AI. And what you might expect when you look at these types of rollouts is that they would all be in a cloud environment, because obviously the public cloud providers are investing a lot of money. So there are a lot of them going there. But interestingly, we see the trend that a lot of data centers, even in 2 years, as this survey result shows, are going to be on premises. And there's lots of good reasons for that, which we'll cover in this presentation. Now, there's also a downside to this because when you're considering multi-cloud rollouts, there's an expectation of having the flexibility and the cost savings, which is always associated with cloud environments. But when you're introducing multiple clouds, it can also introduce operational hurdles and do the opposite of simplifying IT. And this isn't because one cloud is particularly bad or something along those lines. It's more because there's multiple different clouds, multiple different systems, and there's additional complexity where you have to configure networks in the, say, 2 or 3 different clouds, but they're all configured differently. They all have their own constructs, parameters, and there's architectural differences as well. And if you have the same IT team as you had 5, 10 years ago, that makes things very difficult. So basically, the reality of introducing multiple clouds can introduce that unexpected complexity, which we think is only going to increase. One of the things I included on this slide was just to talk about GPU deployments for enterprises. And when we asked a number, I think it was like 1,000 enterprises who were decision makers, not just random enterprises, on their GPU deployment plans, they were expecting it to grow to 73% in 2 years. And what was interesting was where they were going to place them. So if you look at this slide, you can see that 65% of the GPUs are planned to spread across 2 to 5 plus data centers, with 24.8% across more than 5. So this could be because they're using multiple cloud providers, but it's also because there's going to be private deployments out there, and you can see this from many vendors. Even on the switching side of networking, that they're talking about scale across models now. And that Facebook example I mentioned earlier with 100,000 GPUs, that was a successor to a single data center 24,000 GPU deployment. And they actually put the 100,000 GPUs across 6 different data centers. So effectively, they had multiple environments that they had to support and data center interconnect. Now, going into these operational challenges, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to have configuration complexity. A lot of these tools, they may have good telemetry or dashboards for their own system, but a lot of cloud providers are concentrating on their own system first and not thinking about the cross-cloud operational realities that regular enterprises have to deal with. And if you don't have the unified dashboards or telemetry, it can be a very big overhead. The skills gap plays into that. Demand across for expertise across different platforms is hard to provision for an IT organization, but it also could be prohibitively expensive because your IT budget isn't necessarily going to increase, but you have to support these multiple different disparate environments. And then also with that, there's going to be multiple different tools, whether it's the consoles from the different vendors, and that can lead to its own set of problems, not just the learning on how to use them, but configurations could be different. You can have misconfigurations. An update might not be applied to one cloud or another because of a manual issue or a mistake. So there's a lot of potential for issues to occur. Now, the other thing to note is when we're looking at AI, the AI traffic patterns are different. So if you're using a learning model, or if you're using inferencing to get the data out and provide it to customers, there's different things that you have to different things you have to think about. And that cross cloud communication can be an issue because data can be located in different data centers, but the inferencing piece where certain data needs to be extracted and used could be a different location. So having latency, having network bottlenecks could be a major concern. Now with that, I think we actually have our first poll.
All right, team, we're going to be launching a poll for you. I would request you to please share your responses with us. Once we get your responses, we're going to be proceeding with the rest of poll session. All right, team, let's have the first question. Here we are. What is your biggest challenge when adding new clouds? Is it network complexity and inconsistent connectivity, managing security and policies across different environments, visibility or monitoring fragmentation, cost management and egress charges, or is it the skills gap or lack of in-house expertise? Do tell us. I mean, these are the most commonly cited reasons. Tell us, what impacts you the most, and that's going to help us and Rajat as well take some of the questions at a later point in time during the webinar. Right, team, can we have the results on our screens? Okay, so 47% managing security and policies across environments. followed by skills gap and lack of in-house expertise. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, Shyam, again, if I look at these the results, one as expected, but the only surprising element is nobody thinks network complexity and inconsistent connectivity is an issue. But other than that, the fact that the responses are spread across the other key points around security, visibility, cost management, skills gap is very much on expected lines.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that with us, Rajat. I shared the same observation, when I spoke with IT leaders across the board. All right, team, let's get on with it now.
All right, great. Thanks. We'll continue then. So one last thing, which I didn't mention so much on one of the concerns, is security. Security, as I mentioned earlier, is often identified as one of the biggest barriers. And we actually have another slide with some research, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But security remains a top concern for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, you don't want your application hacked or the front end to display the incorrect data or some message on there which you have not authorized. But with AI workloads, the data itself is of more concern, because obviously when we look at that data, it can be very rich to provide the answers which are required for generative AI applications. And also the confidentiality of the users interacting with it is of utmost concern. So, that's one thing. And then that's also compounded by two other factors. One is data sovereignty. So there's compliance laws by different locations which have to be satisfied. Some data cannot be transferred to a centralized application because of local governance laws. And there's also the concept of data gravity. I was listening to one particular model vendor, and he was making the point that with some of their most successful deployments is people who already had their data organized, and they moved the networking and the infrastructure and the inference infrastructure as well to where the data was. And that's really the concept of data gravity, where you basically go towards where the data is. So it's less disruptive. You can put in safeguards between that data and the applications, etc. And it may end up with a quicker deployment as well. Now let's go and look at some of the enterprise sentiment for rolling out AI applications and other things as well. So we have a number of different questions here. And, one of the things we asked enterprises, and this is a very recent survey, is what was the key evaluation criteria for AI networking suppliers? And one of the most interesting things about this is, there's a couple of answers which are similar, but the top one is prioritizes AI solutions and support across cloud and multi-cloud environments. So a lot of the enterprises know that they have to make sure that they can provide the networking infrastructure to be able to deliver their AI applications. Agentic is a very hot topic right now in many different deployments from almost every vendor. So we expect to see that one there. And as we mentioned earlier, security is top of mind. That normally tops it. But it's interesting, the top one on this one was the solution support across cloud and multi-cloud environments, not just security. Now, we asked this question a year ago as well. You can see that in the blue one here. And when we look at the one highlighted in a red box a bit lower on, one thing we can see is organizations, I think the way I read this is organizations are getting more confident in their deployments. So they still need the support, and they need the support in the specific environments like cloud and multi-cloud environments. But they're also a little bit more confident than they were a year ago, which shows a maturing market here. Now, a slightly different variation of this question is we asked what was the barriers to success for AI and networking. And as you would expect, security comes in number one. That can be a big issue, because if you don't have security, you're not going to deploy the actual application. You're not going to let your data go out in the wild without some guardrails or controls or items along those lines. But when we look at the next three, this is very much in line with what I said in the first section, which is the cost and complexity of solutions is one of the the biggest challenges. This should go down over time, especially when people implement solutions that allow them to reduce that complexity, like multi-cloud networking, which we're talking about today. Integration challenges it's actually gone up in the last year as well, which probably is by virtue of having more products which are actually going to production. But the other thing is the shortage of IT staff and experience. So again, as these complex environments get deployed, you need to basically simplify it as much as possible to basically get success with those deployments. Now, when we also asked the enterprises about what are the biggest reasons for selecting a strategic partner or partners across the network infrastructure, there was a couple of interesting results here. So, for example, they provide the best combination of AI technology solutions and support services. So basically, they're looking for those solutions which are going to help them meet their business objectives. And then also, when we look at the fourth one in here, it actually isn't the fourth. It's actually joint third with the one above it. It's got the exact same number of respondents selecting it, so it's actually joint third. But it's prioritizing the critical AI networking capabilities. And this one includes bandwidth, automation, security. So organizations know that to be able to implement these new applications and the AI projects they need to be able to deliver the infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, which would allow that to happen. Now, another slightly different take on the placement question, because earlier we asked where the Gen AI applications were being placed. This one actually asks where the data is being placed. And I think this one's interesting because you can see that the data, there's a lot more data still on premise. And if you take it with the question we looked at earlier, the applications may be in the cloud, but they might have to get the data from some of these on-premises systems. So again, interconnection becomes a key thing. And this isn't just now, this is actually in the future, because we asked, where do you see it going in 2 years? And it wasn't that big a change on that. So the interconnection piece is vital for these deployments. Now, this leads on to considering multi-cloud connections, because we basically want to make this interconnection requirement work more seamlessly. So as the organizations do go into this digital transformation journey, they need to come up with ways to basically make sure that their teams can deploy these without a great increase in costs. Both on the technology side, in terms of certain scenarios which might come up. For example, we hear a lot of organizations might start on one model, AI model, but they may then move to a different AI model. Now, that AI model isn't guaranteed to be in the same area, i.e. public cloud provider. It could be on-premise. It could be, they move from a pilot to production and it's less expensive to run on-premise. It could be that they decided to move to a SaaS provider. Their applications might have multiple different connections to be able to formulate answers which weren't there in the traditional applications they have. So one of the solutions to be able to deliver this type of interconnection which is required is using multi-cloud networking solutions. And there's two elements to this. There's the higher level application services in an MCN, which is a multi-cloud networking solution set, which allows you to deploy common sets of services to multiple different cloud environments. And there's also multi-cloud connectivity. So this is the underlay network, which basically allows the connections between whichever data centers, clouds, on-premise environments you have. And ideally, these work together to address the challenges, provide a unified dashboard, add the scale, and, give the same security across all the different environments you operate. Now, when I was talking earlier, we were talking about how many of the AI rollouts, as an example, which failed today, which was, I think it was 55%. And that is a pretty high number. organizations are trying to move up the maturity of their deployments. And I think when the first AI applications rolled out, it was very much ad hoc. People were just doing one-off projects, and it wasn't as streamlined as it could be. Ideally, you want to move to a fully autonomous, automated environment, which is basically the nirvana to get operational benefits as you mature your multi-cloud model. So the value of multi-cloud networking and multi-cloud connectivity is you really are able to abstract away the disparate intricacies of these different cloud environments, and you can basically connect seamlessly to the multiple different clouds. You can deploy services and almost use it as if it was one network from a single control plane. This approach, when realized, simplifies network operations and empowers the IT teams to deliver their services effectively. And hopefully it frees up time for those in the organization as well. But it gives them the freedom to focus on strategic initiatives, which are important to the business, not just troubleshooting and dealing with issues which are caused by this multi-cloud complexity. Now let's go into two different areas. Let's look at the operational value of multi-cloud networking, and then on the next slide, we'll look at the strategic value of multi-cloud networking. So when we look at the operational value, there's multiple different benefits. So for example, you can have simplified configurations and reduced complexity. The standardized dashboards, which allow you to deploy networks, security policy across multiple networks, dramatically reduces time. Instead of having to do it 3 different times, double check your work, etc. Just doing it once makes a lot more sense and gives you that peace of mind that when you push out a security policy, it goes to all the different environments you have, not just one. Then also, when it comes to troubleshooting, it's going to be quicker to do to work out what the root cause of an issue is. And with that, you can basically see from a unified dashboard where an error is on which network and have a common set of alerts which come up, so you don't have to work out what things mean on one network versus the other. So this can basically reduce the manual tasks, improve that reliability to keep your organization running more effectively, which in this more complex environment is a very important thing. Mitigating tool proliferation. This kind of goes with what I've already said in these two above, but basically, your configurations are more guaranteed to be correct because you're pushing the same configuration out from one dashboard and there's no ambiguity. So you have that consistency between the different networks. Now, going on to AI support. You can basically optimize the AI and the other advanced workloads which you might have on there. So if you have a multi-cloud networking product, you can choose particular networks to deliver certain applications. So if your application is high bandwidth, it can select one type of network and one set of application services. If it's more inference, it might be more bursty and require lower latency. So you'd have a lot more control about how you deploy your applications, which will all be different. And you can also do dynamic resource allocation as well, when you need to, if the application demands it. Now, the last piece on the operational side is just the efficiency and the agility. And you can probably see the efficiency from what I've talked about with the centralized management, configuration, unified policy, monitoring. But I think the agility is something, especially for strategic needs, which is very important because with that, you can deploy a lot more quickly. You can work out what's going, and it basically really just allows you to streamline those operations. So the networking team and the application team can deliver for the business objectives more quickly. The other thing, when we go over to the strategic values, it addresses the skills gap. You no longer have to have an expert in, say, AWS, Azure, or any other number of different clouds which are out there, because with a multi-cloud networking solution, it's abstracted away, so you can create a policy and then push it out to those different clouds. And as well as the skills gap and keeping your network admins and your security team happier with all this, it also allows you to take more junior engineers to be able to do these tasks and have confidence that they're doing it correctly, because it's not as complex as it was before, and it speeds up the onboarding for those engineers as well, and allows them to have experience but with a lot less risk. The centralized policy, again, talking about risk, it helps with the compliance and the security standards, again, reducing the misconfigurations. And then also a side benefit you can have, as it's a centralized unified console, you can also have centralized audit trails and see how things were put into place if you need to, as well as data sovereignty controls, etc., if the vendor offers those particular features. The other thing, when you have multiple different environments, you can also automate failover. So if something happens at one data center, you can fail over to another data center or cloud environment or application environment to minimize the downtime and improve the performance and resilience of the networks. That same ability to fail over to different types of data centers can also help with cost optimization and predictability. So organizations can choose between different data centers based on cost, and also you want to give a predictable user experience. So you may want to select for certain type of users that they go to certain data centers. Say if they're in Brazil, they go to Sao Paulo. If they're in San Francisco, they go to a data center in the Bay Area or San Francisco, where I am right now, or wherever it might be. So that it can give you a lot more flexibility, because you actually have that control of your environment with the multi-cloud networking and connectivity solution. The final thing we have on here is the strategic agility and innovation. So when we look at these types of constructs, they don't just support regular applications. They can also support some of the modern cloud native containerized and microservices applications, which are offered by cloud providers, or if you build them yourselves as well, and allow you to deploy these edge environments as you need, because you may have one primary cloud provider, but you might have multiple different vendors which are required to be connected to and have that interconnection with to deliver these AI applications. So having these types of tools allows you to deploy these services and make the connection in a very flexible and adaptable manner as your business priorities change, or as you move from, say, as I mentioned earlier, pilot to production, or for any other particular reason. Now, steps to realize the value of multi-cloud networking. This is interesting, because one of the key things in this maturity model I mentioned earlier, with a lot of the new technology, it always starts at the ad hoc level, but really what you want to do is get to a repeatable solution. So if you are deploying multiple clouds, you don't want to have to work out a brand new approach, take 3 months to do a deployment and work out how to do it. You want something which is repeatable, which you can use in multiple different clouds and have that connectivity to those different clouds as well. Ideally, you want to move to an autonomous state, but you want to move through these stages. It doesn't happen overnight. You want to move through these stages in a structured manner, and especially on the repeatable and optimized areas as well. And you can have significant benefits if you work to move through these different stages. Now, like we were saying, with multi-cloud networking and the multi-cloud connectivity, really what we're creating, when you think about it, is a unified abstraction layer for networking to meet all your networking needs that you have out there. And this is a very very powerful tool. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. I might have jumped the gun a little bit, but when we looked at the spending survey, the Future Enterprise Resiliency and Spending Survey, we asked the enterprises, and I think there was 888 enterprises were asked. How many of the AI rollouts did not deliver measurable business outcomes, and it's 55%. And this could be for a myriad of reasons. But as we demonstrated with all the data you've seen on here, is interconnection is a key piece. If you don't have the right connectivity to the right applications, the right AI models, or maybe the right microservices, Kubernetes environment, or maybe a cloud provider, you can seriously be put behind, or you might have to make compromises which don't lead to the results that you are looking for. So, by having this tool at your disposal to be able to make connections when you need to multiple different environments, and then insert the services, whether it's routing, security, or whatever it might be, a firewall, it can really help you deploy and realize the value of the projects you're doing, whether they're AI or other projects as well. So with that, I think we have poll number 2.
That's right. All right, team, let's have a look at the second poll as well, and let's get the audience reactions on this. All right, so what outcomes would you prioritize from a unified multi-cloud networking platform? Would it be simplified cross-cloud connectivity, security and policy, visibility, optimization, or faster rollouts? Rajat, based on your partnering up with different customers, helping them along the multi-cloud journey as well, how have the needs or how have their necessities changed over the last couple of years or so compared to, let's say, 5 years ago? Has the GenAI workloads made a huge difference? Do you see a difference there?
Absolutely, and I think it's part of also the key takeaway from Paul's discussion here, which is that whether it's users or your applications or data, it's all distributed now, and a lot of these application data are distributed across multiple clouds, whether public or private. And what is now needed is how to manage that complexity, right? In that sense, one of the best ways that has emerged in terms of how to manage that complexity is abstracting it away, right? And if you look at the results now, I'm looking at again, I think the centralized security and visibility come across just like last time. Automation in terms of addressing application performance needs, and of course faster rollouts. Now what I find interesting is that these let's say these 5 issues are not totally decoupled. If you for example need faster rollout of your applications, you need to have ability to have those simplified cross-cloud connectivity solutions too, right? So in that sense, and also a centralized security policies allows you to apply those policies consistently, and that also enables, for example, faster rollout of these applications. So in one sense, these all 5 are not completely decoupled, and one thing leads to another. But again, I think the results are very much on expected lines.
Correct, absolutely. All right, team, can we close the poll and let's get back to Paul and what he has for us in the multi-cloud environments.
All right, let's move on to the last section. So the last 2 slides, we're going to talk about some of the takeaways for business and IT leaders, because we've had a lot of information so far in this presentation. And a lot of these projects don't get off the ground unless there's a good reason and also support from the C-level. So, enterprise leaders are looking to advance their multi-cloud strategies to support these workloads, which we've mentioned. And the acceleration of these abilities can really help drive down the cost for organizations and decrease that complexity we've seen with these workloads. AI really has become a central part of the enterprise IT ecosystem, and if it isn't affecting yours today, it probably will do soon. And the business case for IT leaders with the adoption of this can be seen across multiple different levels. So if we look at the CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, and CEOs, starting with the CIOs, we can see that the Chief Information Officer by solving some of those problems and getting those benefits we talked about earlier, can get greater operational efficiency, keep his team happier to help with retention, and basically fix problems faster. So reducing downtime. And let's say, for example, you're an e-commerce company and you have a downed application that would cost you a lot of money, depending on what you're selling. And you'll be able to resolve those type of issues very quickly, and especially across multiple different clouds in that more complex environment is important. Now, the CTO might think that's a great thing to have, but they're also looking at the implementation of different applications to support the business. So, with using a multi-cloud connectivity and a multi-cloud networking solution, they can reduce the blockers which they encounter to deploy those applications. They can deploy applications a lot more quickly and have a greater choice of applications and application environments that they can use to deliver on AI initiatives or machine learning initiatives, but also for their entire digital transformation project across all the applications. Now, the CFOs, they're going to like the less downtime because that would cost money, but they're probably also going to like the fact that the organization is running more efficiently and more predictably. So, being able to make sure that they can retain the talent, not have to retrain people in the regular IT department, can have an impact on the bottom line as well. So reducing costs is going to be very attractive to the CFOs. And ultimately, the CTO is taking orders from the CEO. So the CEO basically can have the freedom to go after, bigger projects which might have a more competitive advantage, and maybe even be a first mover in a market to acquire more business, so that they can actually achieve their strategic objectives to get those better business outcomes by having a more flexible IT environment with something like multi-cloud networking, which really, when you think about it, unlocks a whole number of abilities, which if you're just running on your on-premise data center, and if you're in a restricted environment, you wouldn't be able to do. So in summary, multi-cloud networking is really that abstraction layer which gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot more power for your business. So with that ends the presentation. So one more slide. I'll just finish on this one. So I'll just talk about MCN, multi-cloud networking, and multi-cloud connectivity. So on the buyer considerations on this, I kind of mentioned it on the last slide, but I'll just reiterate it. AI workloads and modern applications require connectivity, and that requires security, government, flexible orchestration, single pane of glass management, etc. across the cloud environments. Application and API needs are exploding, especially APIs as well, which still need that governance and security when they're connecting to more important data sources with a lot more data in it. And this is actually even going to grow from what it is today dramatically with AI inference. We can see right now that organizations are spending a lot on learning models and deploying vast GPU data centers. That's going to be used by the AI inference applications, and that's going to really drive global interconnection needs to the next level. Whether you're using it in a cloud or data center or connecting to a SaaS platform for some portion of your application needs. Enterprises are investing in this. We said most organizations, in the high 60s are already hybrid cloud, but this is only going to increase because the competition between organizations will depend on the experiences they give to their customers. And as we see in the AI world versus the regular, website world, for lack of a better word, is, the requests which are coming into AI require unique responses each time. It's not just a static page being given up by a website, and that different data might be coming from multiple different sources, i.e. that interconnection, the API items, which I talked about earlier. Deploying virtual network functions, which is one of the underpinnings for multi-cloud networking, to different environments gives you that peace of mind that you have the same security, you have the same networking capabilities, the controls on that data which is being passed through that network entity which you've set up your abstraction layer for. So deploying multiple different virtual network functions is essential on there and an essential part of multi-cloud networking. And to basically end it, I'm just going to talk about the centralized planning. One of the big things with AI and the modern applications is changing dramatically. Some of the GPU and other advancements are coming every 2 years. It's not 6 years or whatever it might be. It might have been in the past. So there's a lot of change which is happening very quickly. So having a repeatable solution to be able to connect and utilize all these resources, delivering on a consistent basis and in a timely manner, really help make sure that your organization can meet the goals of the business. So with that really is the last slide. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to you guys.
All right, I think that was a great presentation. Folks, that was Paul Nicholson, the Vice President Research at IDC. He's our go-to man for anything that revolves around cloud and data center networks. All right, with that, let's welcome back our multi-cloud wizard, Rajat Gopal. Rajat, tell us a little bit about how you're looking at these complexities. We know, some of the biggest problems that, IT leaders are facing at this point in time is, of course, complexity and how frustratingly long it takes to solve issues. But very importantly, it's about cloud costs as well, which have increased by about 20 to 30% over the last 12 months. Tell us a little bit about how do you see these challenges, and also how's Tata Comm helping companies solve some of these complexities? Over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Shamak. First, I think Paul did an excellent job in showcasing all the challenges that a modern enterprise faces and the potential path forward for them. What we at Tata Communications have seen is, number one, that the domains of cloud, security, and networking, have been converging for some time now, and this convergence is only being accelerated by the AI trends, right? In terms of as the enterprises increasingly adopt AI applications or train their own models, do inference. So this, trend lines are only becoming sharper. And I'm going to start with just showing how we at Tata Communications see, this landscape, the multi-cloud landscape, and how we can play into addressing those enterprise challenges. Is that, for some time now, we have tried to, make what you see here is a reality. Is that, can we make a network, or can we create a network, or allow our customers to, spin up a network that can span every cloud? And when I say cloud, it is not limited to public clouds like AWS, Azure, or Google Compute Platform. It is, both public and private. Can we create a network that can span all these clouds in minutes? Right. So the idea here is that, as especially with the advent of AI, you have these workloads that are distributed, data that is distributed. You would want to create these connections, between the data sets, between where the applications are, and also have the ability to tear down those, connections if need be, to save on cost, for example. So the quest to create this ephemeral network that spread across clouds has been one of our quests. And the good news is, we have finally been successful in creating just that, a network, which includes intrinsic security and spans across clouds, provides you, complete borderless visibility, and you can do that not in, months or years, does not require any specialized hardwares, and just abstracts away the complexities. And so what I'm very pleased to share with you. Yes, thank you. So pleased to share with you the launching of the ISO Plus multi-cloud network. Even though the product name is multi-cloud network, security is just peeping from behind. Is that we talk about the convergence of cloud, security, and network. So this is something that we have built grounds up, a 100% software product that is cloud agnostic. It creates an abstraction layer that talks to any cloud, public or private, and you have the ability to create this network that spans across clouds, not in minutes, not in months, but just minutes, right? So just a few clicks and the network is deployed. When we were building this, right, so we followed some very specific design principles in terms of how this product must be built, right? The first part is, as Paul talked about, the complexity of the multi-cloud, which is the new normal, is that the best way to manage complexity is to abstract it. So what we have built is an abstraction layer that, think of this as a common control plane for all these clouds that translates the user intent in terms of what they want to connect, what they want to communicate in terms of their applications spread across multiple clouds or data sets spread across multiple clouds. So they can simply describe the intent, and this abstraction layer translates that intent to the specific command set for individual clouds. So that's one. The second piece was, the security piece in terms of how you are able to access this platform. So we followed the same authentication principles that these cloud providers natively require you to. So if you use the credentials to log into your accounts with these cloud providers, be it AWS, Azure, GCP, etc., you could use the same credentials to authenticate to this platform. And once you have done that, what we do is this software product actually goes to discover all the cloud resources you, the customer, you, the user, have across all these clouds. So it creates one unified enumeration of every resource that you have across your cloud footprint, irrespective of the geography or the cloud region or the cloud provider. So there is one unified data set that capture all the resources you have. Now, once you have that view, you can then describe your intent in terms of what you want to make sure can communicate. That could be at the networking layer 3 level. I want to, for example, make sure these subnets in various VPCs or VNets across different clouds to be able to always communicate with each other. At the same time, you could have the converse policy that these subnets cannot be reachable from anywhere else. Or you could actually describe your intent at the application level. I want these microservices or these applications running in various Kubernetes clusters across different clouds to be able to reach to each other, or again, conversely, be islands and are not reachable. So once you have described your intent, just a few clicks, and the software automatically creates a network topology. It thinks, what is the best way to translate that intent into a multi-cloud secure network, and it then creates that topology. And with the concurrence of the user, then one more click and the entire network is then provisioned. Once the network is provisioned, you can see it operational. It starts generating telemetry, and at that point, that's not the end of the story, because the network then is self-aware. It continuously tries to optimize itself based on how it is operating. For example, are the application performance goals being served? Are the lowest latency paths being taken for applications that are sensitive to latency, for example? Or if the user has set policies that they want cost-aware routing, is that being implemented properly, right? So it continuously tries to optimize itself to converge onto the policies and the preferences that the user has set. And if you look at the two kind of guardrails on the side, number one, ephemeral. You can set this network up and tear it down on demand in minutes. And of course, security is built into that. It's not an afterthought or a bolt-on. And in terms of there are some very key innovation pillars that we have employed to build this product. We talked about how to convert the intent, the user intent, into a multi-cloud network. That's one. And and part of it is automatically generating the network topology. So essentially, the user need not be experts in cloud networking on any of these platforms. This software takes care of that. The other is, network as code. We want to make network creation, secure network creation, as easy as writing code. So essentially, beyond APIs, we actually provide the ability to have this integrated with the programming language of a choice as part of your CI/CD pipeline, so that the applications can provision networks on demand based on their needs. And finally, we operate both at the L3 at the IP layer and also L7 at the application layer. So the application layer is aware of the capabilities of the layer 3, and so that the best and the most optimal network paths can be provisioned based on the needs of the application. And what it leads to ultimately, ultimately the user really cares about is the outcomes. And the outcomes all this delivers is faster resolution time. If you want to debug something, why something is not working as expected, a lot of overhead reduction in terms of what Paul were talking about, the skills otherwise you require to apply, hiring people for multiple clouds, or the tools sprawl that you may have, that is all reduced. And the egress cost reduction, for example, which is one of the biggest billing shocks that a typical user experiences going to the cloud, and which is actually amplified when you go to multi-cloud. So all these result in cost savings, this overhead reduction, and a faster time to resolution of any issues that may crop up. So that, in a nutshell, is the solution that we have built to address all the challenges and the complexities of the multi-cloud that Paul talked about, and especially in the AI era when all this is greatly amplified. So in terms of the architecture of this platform is very simple. It adheres to the software-defined networking principles. There is a centralized orchestration plane that, again, as I talked about, abstracts away all the cloud complexities, and then controls a data plane that spans across different clouds. And in terms of the key feature that it provides, of course, cloud agnostic connectivity, a single pane of glass, from an operational perspective, integrated security. For example, both micro and macro segmentations are built into the product, which allows you to not only create segments of resources like subnets and applications that can communicate with each other, but by design, the ones that are not part of any segments are not reachable. So security is built into. Intent, again, the fastest way to convert intent to an operational network, and of course, cross-border visibility and observability across these clouds, right? And that are all reflected in the customer dashboard that is very intuitive and flexible. And in terms of every, I would say, multi-cloud networking solution operates at two levels. There is an overlay aspect to it and an underlay. This particular platform that we have built, operates at the overlay level, but we are able to integrate with any underlay, including, for example, the internet provided by the cloud provider. And we also have our own underlay solution, that is ISO plus Multi-Cloud Connect, that provides much deeper integration and a lot of additional functionality and benefits, because this is 1 + 1 is greater than 2 effect. Because we can control this underlay and provide a lot more functionality together that we can do with any third-party solution. But the net effect is that irrespective of where your applications are, where your data is, where your AI workloads are in terms of training or inference across any cloud, public or private, this network can span it all and allow all those applications and data sets to communicate with each other in a reliable and resilient fashion. Okay, here's the time for another poll.
All right, team. Let's take a look at the next set of poll questions. Poll 3, what do you have for our audience here? So how many different tools, consoles, and dashboards does your team use on a weekly basis to manage multi-cloud networking? All right. Team, can we close the poll and have a look at the results on our screen, please? 50% of them have already taken a unified approach. 20% of them say highly fragmented. 20% of them are still saying, they've lost count. Lost count is really, really bad, Rajat. Rajat, I mean, in your experience, is this often the case? I mean, are you seeing this with Indian enterprises? Are there just way too many tools and consoles and dashboards at this point in time?
No, I think it's very much reflective of the state of the affairs, right? And it depends on, where you are in the multi-cloud journey. People, in this case, the responses that are around, we have one unified tool set. Likely they are at the beginning of that multi-cloud journey. And of course, there are other responses, half of them, which says, we have either 10 plus or we lost counters, most likely are on the advanced stages of that multi-cloud journey. But in one sense, I would say people who still maybe are in the early stages and have just a few tool sets, they can see what's in front of them as they go on that maturity curve that Paul talked about, and which leads to greater multi-cloud adoption. That's where you're going to land, right? This plethora of tool set that is required, and at some point, almost becomes unmanageable. In fact, that's a classic, rationale for why this abstraction plane is needed to address, this particular challenge. So where do you have, instead of all these 10 plus tools, or, where you have lost count, you have one single tool, and that allows you to manage, the complexity across these clouds through that single pane of glass. But thank you. Okay, so moving on. So in terms of, just to then come back to the, in a nutshell, the real value propositions that you get once, an enterprise, whether, of any vertical, whether you are in the financial or manufacturing or any other, or even healthcare, the outcomes that you really get out of adoption of this ISO Plus multi-cloud network platform are on these three fronts, right? So this is kind of the summation of all the value proposition that we talk about. The first one is what we call autopilot networking, and this is again depending on where you are in your multi-cloud journey, whether you are early on just with the say 2 clouds, or you've already gone far enough to have more than 4 clouds. That automation and scale is needed in terms of a solution that allows you to create these networks and allow you to manage these networks in a secure fashion across all this cloud, right? So how fast you can do that, how can you automate the process, becomes paramount, and this product addresses that specifically. The second one, what we call borderless insights. Each cloud, for example, has, I think fairly good tools in terms of providing visibility, how that particular cloud works. But the moment you have to go across clouds, and this is even after some of the cloud providers have come out with, announcements where you can build connections across clouds, but still the insights across those are still missing. Right. So if you want end-to-end visibility, right, across those boundaries, region boundaries, cloud provider boundaries, you need a product like ISO Plus multi-cloud network, right, which then not only gives you visibility, but then also allows you to set policies based on that visibility, which leads to actionable results. And then finally, the intrinsic security. We have used the word intrinsic by choice in terms of security is not an afterthought, not a bolt-on. That is built into the fabric of this multi-cloud network solution, which means, we talked about how from a both micro and macro segmentation perspective, this leads to a far more secure network than otherwise. So if you have to, take these 3 takeaways in terms of the foundational value proposition pillars of this product, these are the 3. And I want to just highlight one specific one around visibility, where the single pane of glass gives you complete visibility in terms of how the network is operating, how you can provision the network, what the network is costing you. That is one of our key features, a near real-time view of how the network is operating and how it's costing you, and how you can set policies that, depending on the awareness of the cost, you could route your traffic on specific underlay links that match your cost expectations, for example. And then, of course, in terms of monitoring and traffic control and diagnosis of if something goes wrong, how quickly you can troubleshoot, all that is part of this dashboard. Finally, we talked about how a complete multi-cloud networking solution requires two dimensions. One is the overlay, which extends across multiple clouds, and then the underlay that provides the transport to carry those bits and bytes across different links. And so we at Tata Communications have addressed both these dimensions in two products that work very close with each other. Today, we talked about the ISO Plus multi-cloud network and all the functionality it brings to the table and the value proposition it delivers to the users. And then we also have the ISO Plus multi-cloud connect that provides direct private connectivity between these multiple cloud environments, which include both public and private. So if you combine these two together, they provide a very powerful solution for all your secure multi-cloud networking needs in the AI era. So Shamik, that's I think where I'll end, and over back to you.
All right, thank you so much for that. I think that was a pretty good insight into what ISO can deliver, ISO Plus, in fact. Now, one thing that really actually stood out from your presentation was you're able to achieve 30% cost savings when it comes to cloud operations. Now, we know that egress costs have increased over the years. Now, could you tell me, how are you going? How are you able to achieve this 30% cost savings? And also, how much or what can organizations benefit in terms of ROI and the cost optimization with ISO Plus and MCN coming into the picture?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, the way we allow our customers to manage those egress costs is I would say multifold, not only twofold. So one is through the choice of the underlay, right? So where the costs come into play is, for example, if you use the cloud providers native internet for egress, those costs, climb up very quickly. So we provide the option to use private connectivity, especially with our own solution, the ISO Plus Multi-Cloud Connect. But even going forward with third-party solutions where that cost can come down. But then more importantly, because we control this overlay, you can choose the egress points. One of the interesting things about cloud providers is not every egress point is created equal. So they have different cost structure. So we allow the network topology to be built in ways that you can choose where the traffic egresses from any cloud region. And then finally, also the amount of traffic, right? So in the way we construct the network, sometimes, if the network is not constructed properly, you can incur egress costs because the traffic is going out of that cloud region and coming back in, right? Some hairpinning happens. So we optimize all that where only when the traffic truly needs to get out of cloud region does that. And so we use various optimization techniques to keep the traffic within the cloud region. So all this adds up to those 30% cost saving that we talk about.
All right, thank you for that. Audience, I would just like to remind you that if you want to share your questions around multi-cloud networking, and if you have any product questions with respect to the ISO Plus, now's the time to share your questions with us in the Q&A box. Rajat here would be happy to address them for you. Our team would have also shared a feedback link URL, which we have got via chat. That's the feedback form. It would be great if you could take some time off and fill that feedback form. It really matters to us as well as to the Tata Com team. All right. Now, with that said, Rajat, the other question I had is a lot of companies out there, they already have an existing network set up. Some of them would have had a unified platform approach. Some of them maybe are still in the process of building it. But if you try to get ISO, if you implement ISO and MCN, multi-cloud networking solution, would it also require me to re-architect my existing network setup, or how does it fit in with what I already got?
Yeah, so if you take a look at a typical enterprise, and I'm using the word typical in terms of that is where average of most enterprises are in terms of adoption of various networking technologies. So they would have a mix of, for example, SD-WAN or SASE, which is SD-WAN plus SSE, secure service edge, or they could have next generation firewalls for security. And then the question, just to translate your question into how does ISO plus multi-cloud network fit into that ecosystem? Are you talking about should they replace them? Answer is no. What we have really built is a Switzerland, if I could use the term of networking, secure networking. And what that means, it is complementary to all those solutions. It is neutral to all the solutions and enhances the value of the solutions rather than requiring you to replace them. For example, SD-WAN historically was built for branch connectivity and then gradually extended to the cloud. But what a typical SD-WAN solution cannot do is provide very granular, what I call east to west connectivity of applications across clouds, for example. So you could actually integrate the ISO plus multi-cloud network solution with an SD-WAN, where the SD-WAN provides the backhaul from the user from your campus network on to the cloud edge, and then the multi-cloud networking solution provide the across cloud connectivity and networking. You could say the same thing, if you look at typical SASE solution, it's meant for user to app connectivity with the identity-based authentication. So the same rules apply there. These two could be the ISO plus multi-cloud network could be integrated with a SASE solution, which provides east-west, very granular cross-cloud networking and application connectivity while applying the identity authentication principles from the SASE solutions. And this solution, the ISO plus MCN, also has the ability to service chain next generation firewalls, add the egress points to scan for any malware. So in that sense, it's very complementary to all the investments enterprise may have made today, and there is no requirement to replace those.
Right. And I think this ISO Plus solution that you just showed us now, that's got a lot of automation workflows built in. You're trying to automate the task of scaling operations. One thing I came across and that really stuck on with me is a self-healing autopilot networking. Tell me a little bit about how did you enforce automation in the provisioning of it, or do CIOs and cloud admins still need to configure each of these clouds manually, or is there some kind of automation you've built into the process as well?
Yeah, so I think this is one of our, I would say, biggest technical achievement as we have architected this product in terms of automatic network topology generation. And if I were to take a step back, right, in our vision, what we have set out to build is a network that is self-assembling, one that is self-securing, and then one that is self-aware. And the question that you asked, addresses that very first point, self-assembling. So we, what we found out is one of the biggest challenges for typical enterprise, especially when it comes to cloud network, is how do you, create an optimal flow from each application or each subnet in different VPCs, across different regions, across different cloud providers, and can we automate that? So what we use is, advanced, graph theory principles and Gen AI tools to actually take the intent, get back to first principles. Hey, user, tell us, what do you want to connect, at a subnet level or at an application level or at a microservice level, and leave it to us or leave it to the software, intelligence to now create a network topology that addresses those needs. So it takes away, all that scope for manual errors and or what it ends up creating a very optimal network framework that really addresses the need of the user.
All right. Just a ballpark figure, if you could share with us, Rajat. Now, you did show to us that the ISO Plus solution can bring down or can give you cost savings in excess of, over 30%. What about the time taken to resolve issues? Do you have any kind of number for that? How much percentage time or how many hours were you able to cut down with this new approach?
Yeah, so we have a lab, internal lab within Tata Communications, and when we test out various scenarios, what we have seen is that with this tool, for example, otherwise, first the base scenario where something goes wrong, and then you have to use a native tool, and with each cloud provider saying, maybe reason my application is not performing optimally is that there is some either slowdown in traffic when it goes across this cloud provider's backbone, or some other issue. Now, the fact that we fully integrate the underlay with the overlay, we have complete visibility into the network path right from when it leaves the application all the way to the physical link and back to the application, the destination. So that has really allowed us, on average, to reduce that expense by about, I think, somewhere between, so there's a range like 15 to as much as 70% in some cases, right? And I would say on average around 30%. And so it depends on the complexity that you have, number of clouds, number of regions, number of applications in play. So the range is somewhere between 50 to 70%, but on average around 30. That's what you'll see.
Now, the other question I had, of course, was around cloud misconfigurations. There are stats that say around 23% of all cloud security incidents were caused by cloud misconfigurations. So how do you ensure that, these CIOs or CISOs, they're able to handle these policy conflicts across different cloud environments in a very efficient and error-free manner? Because, you have different clouds, different cloud environments. Each one could be catering to a different policy. So if there's any conflict in policy, is there a way to resolve it in a better manner or easier manner?
Yeah, I think, the two biggest challenges on the security front when it comes to multi-cloud is, one, the consistent application of security across different clouds. As you know, each cloud has its own ways of securing your workloads.
Right.
So that's one. The other one, which has gained prominence recently, is the drift, meaning even after you may have applied policy securely, has there been changes? For example, somebody could go out of band and change something, and we don't know what the implication of that on security is. So what a modern solution must do today is allow the user to apply those policies securely, consistently. But number two, being able to detect if there is any drift in those policies and immediately remediate that, right? So that is the goal of the product and that we have built, is to help across both these fronts.
All right. I think that pretty much covers all our discussion points here. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Rajat Gopal, the VP of Cloud Networking and Security Solutions, Tata Communications. Thank you so much, Rajat, for sharing your insights with us and also telling us so much about ISO Plus and what it can do to solve multi-cloud networking problems. I think there was a lot of takeaways, a lot of benefits that a lot of our audience members would want to take back with them. Audience, again, let me remind you that we've got this feedback form. It would have come as a link to you. Do fill that up and do share it with us. It's important for both Tata Com as well as for ETCIO. Right. With that said, I think we'll bid you goodbye. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's webinar. Thank you again, Rajat. And you guys have a great evening ahead. Take care.